Hey, what's up, everyone? New episode here for you. This will be the first episode that comes out while I'm back at work. And that may seem like a small thing, but to me it's kind of exciting because it's kind of reiterating the fact that I want to keep this going. The fact that I picked what I think is a reasonable schedule for me. You know, I've had a lot of fun making these episodes. I appreciate all the feedback I've gotten so far. I'm glad I've got the momentum going in the right direction. So the fact that I'm back at work, I'm still able to produce some content for you guys is a big win for me personally. I hope most of you guys are back at work soon. If you're not already, I hope most of your gyms are open. If they're not already, it seems like we may be going in the right direction. It's not the podcast to get into whether states should open or not. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I hope you guys are well. Let's get into today's topic. Today, we're going to be talking about jogging. The reason I picked jogging for this episode is because I put an Instagram post up after a run of me talking about my thoughts on jogging, why I don't really incorporate it for myself or most of my clients. The positives I see in it, the negatives I see in it. And that post generated probably the most feedback, the most DMs, the most text messages, conversations back and forth of maybe any Instagram post I put up. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Jogging is, utilized by a lot of people. It's really easy to get into. It's a very low barrier of entry. You kind of just get up and you do. I think also that a lot of people come from an athletic background, where there are conditioning tests or conditioning days where you spend a lot of your time jogging. I know for me personally, as a pitcher, we spent so much time jogging. Whether it was running poles or on our conditioning days doing, these football field suicides, every 5 yards and back. We spent a hugely disproportionate amount of our time jogging for what was asked of us. As a pitcher, you're really going maximal effort for, 2 seconds at a time. It's not necessarily a long duration sprint or long duration, jog type activity, when you play. So from an athletic background, a lot of people have spent a lot of time jogging. And I think that kind of gave this, reaction, made people think about, why are they really jogging? Is it, for the right reasons? Is it progressing them forward? So it's just a short Instagram post, a couple minutes. Again, I'll link it in the show notes. But it generated a lot of discussion, so I figured let's get on the podcast, get a little bit longer time to kind of explain my thoughts on jogging, what I see as the positives, what I see as the negatives, and how to, hopefully successfully incorporate it into a bigger overall fitness routine. So let's go ahead and get into it. One of the main statements I made in that Instagram post is that jogging, by number, is the most dangerous sport as far as injury rate that you can do. Okay, so I went online, went to the National Center for Biotechnical Information, the NCBI, and they had a systemic review of injuries related to jogging studies. Okay, and this had a pretty wide range of participants and ages and stuff like that. So I'm just going, instead of separating men and women, I'm just going to take the overall numbers and kind of give them to you. So in that systemic review of the overall participants, they saw an injury rate between 20 and 80% of the studies. Now that's a pretty big range. So we'll just, I like to be an optimist. I'm going to stick to the lower range of that. Let's say there's a 20% risk of injury. So it's 1 in 5. 1 in 5 people who jog are going to sustain some type of injury from jogging. whether that's joint injuries, tendinopathy, tendinosis, Achilles, patellar, or muscle strains, muscle pulls, hamstrings, calves. You get into your low back, stuff like that. 1 in 5. According to data, about 60 million people jogged in the past year. So that was done in, I think that number was from 2018. So in 2018, 60 million people jogged at least once, considering themselves jogging. If we take 20% of 60 million, that means 12 million people had injuries related to running. So that's just a huge number. Now, do I think jogging is as dangerous a sport as, say, motorcycle racing or football? No. It's really, the injuries come from a couple different factors. It comes from poor running mechanics. It comes from the really easy ability to overdo, to overuse jogging. So it's not necessarily that these injuries are life-threatening, career-ending type stuff a majority of the time, but these little nagging type things. So I guess since we're on the kind of the negative side of it, let's just go ahead and go that route. So I have like some pretty research. I didn't go on Google machine and research this stuff, but it's all anecdotal evidence from people I've worked with, athletes I've worked with, stuff like that. So the number one, like I said, the number one cause I believe for this high injury number is poor running mechanics. Poor running mechanics have huge impact on your musculoskeletal system, on your skeletal system, even on your nervous system. So generally speaking, most of the standard jogging population, I'm not talking about your elite level distance runners, your Ironman, your ultra marathoners, triathletes, stuff like that. They're not part of this group, right? It's your average 9 to 5 person who goes out on a 1 to 3, 1 to 5 mile jog at a medium pace. They generally are the people more susceptible to injuries due to poor running mechanics. Poor running mechanics, I'm thinking heel striking, reaching out in front of your hip, so you're not landing with your midfoot underneath your hip to propel you forward. You're reaching out in front to pull forward. Those are probably the two big injury mechanics for the lower body. For the upper body, thinking an inefficient arm swing, so maybe you're twisting side to side rather than just going forward and back with your arms. So to start, that heel strike, that's the big one. The thing is, when you are sprinting, it's much tougher to heel strike, especially if you're going up, say, an incline. It's much tougher to heel strike, because what happens when you heel strike is you technically slow yourself down, right? Your heel is your brake, so you are slowing yourself down and then having to re-accelerate. But when you're jogging, you're going generally at a slow enough pace that you don't recognize, the forces traveling up, the chain. So if you're sprinting, you hit your heel, you generally feel kind of a little bit of a jarring motion, so this repetitive, low impact kind of heel strike during a jog can send, force up through your knee, up through your hip. That's where you get a lot of, joint injuries, low back, even heel striking. So you're out in front means your hamstrings in its most elongated position, which is its most vulnerable position. And then you are pulling, so you're using your hamstring to pull your leg back under you to propel yourself forward. And that's where a lot of those muscle injuries can happen. Your hamstring pulls, your hamstring strains. That's how all muscle pulls generally happen. They start in this really elongated, vulnerable position. They contract rapidly, and they're just not able to withstand that force. So the poor running mechanics kind of lead to, I would think, most of those injuries. I think the second thing, on top of the poor running mechanics is the ease of overuse. Like I mentioned, a very low barrier of entry into jogging. You don't need, a specific gym. You don't need specific pieces of equipment. You don't need, even necessarily a ton of time. You just need a pair of shoes and the ability to, go outside. Or if you live in, middle of nowhere mountains, maybe a treadmill when it's really snowy. But you can really just start. You get up, you lace your shoes, you go for a run. We saw this a lot at the start of the stay-at-home orders. People were tired of being cooped up. They didn't have the excuse of not having time anymore. So you saw them go out and start jogging, and they would jog, maybe 3 miles, 5 miles, day one. And all of a sudden, their body's not used to it. Muscles end up being a lot more sore. Maybe their joints are a little bit achy the next day. So, they don't keep up with what they're doing. It's just really easy. You can tell your mind you can do anything. I can go out and run 5 miles today. No big deal. And maybe you can run 5 miles, but can you run 5 miles today and be okay tomorrow? Like, that's the big thing. So a lot of people tend to overuse jogging, especially early in the process. They don't see it as something you need to work up to. And then one of the big negatives I see, and why I don't program it for a lot of my clients now, is it can set training goals back. When you jog, yes, you're burning calories. Generally, you're burning more calories than a few different activities, a lot of different activities. But those calories come from both muscle and fat. So a lot of people use jogging because they want to, quote, tone up, which I think is just a garbage term. Toning is building muscle in the absence of fat. So while you're jogging, yes, you are burning fat. Theoretically, you're thinking you may be able to tone up, but you're also burning those muscles. So you're not really gaining muscle while losing fat. You're not really maintaining the muscle while losing fat. You're kind of losing both. Your body just wants calories. It doesn't really care where they come from. Kind of along that same vein, you can't just jog to try and lose, fat around your belly or fat around your legs. That's not how it works. Your body just pulls the calories. You can't spot reduce. Maybe you'll burn a little more on the legs because they're being used, but it's not going to be the main, the only source. So I think, especially with my clients now, a lot of them want to, the main goal is, I want to just be fit. It's kind of the general term. I want to, have some muscle mass. I want to have a positive, feeling of everyday activities. The activities of daily living, they want to be able to perform them, not really have to think about, joints aching, low back, or anything like that. So typically, I stay away from programming jogging with them because it's just, the risk reward isn't really there. We can get, the same fat burning benefit and, a bigger muscle building benefit from stuff like kettlebell swings or sled pushes or sled drags and stuff like that without having to put, a ton of wear and tear on their joints. Now, when I was training athletes, we taught them how to run correctly. That was a big, proponent of our program. I was okay, if they wanted to go out and jog after a weightlifting session. I was okay if they wanted to go out and jog on the weekend for recovery. They knew how to run. They kind of knew what they could handle. So there's just a lot of trust in them. So it's not that I don't program training or jogging into training. I'm of the mindset that everything works, but not everything works for everyone, and not everything works for every situation. So it's very individualized. Like I said, most of my clients now don't jog. Most of my clients now are adults, who need to be able to function at work and can't have this wear and tear. Most of my clients then were young athletes with a lot of energy who knew how to run properly. So it's okay with the jogging then. So it's really being fluid and moldable. Now, some of the positives I see from jogging, I see this, in my own use of jogging. I see it in some of my clients' use of jogging, when they decide to. The big one is building an aerobic base. An aerobic base allows you to train more frequently, allows you to train more modalities, allows you to recover quicker. The great thing about aerobic base is, you can build it up through multiple aerobic activities, jogging, swimming, biking, kind of these long duration, steady state exercises. You can build this aerobic base, your ability to utilize oxygen more effectively. And then it stays really well. So just because you use jogging to build your aerobic base doesn't mean you need to keep jogging to maintain it. You can now go into tempo runs, you can go into sled pushes, you can go into stuff like cluster sets or high intensity interval training, where you're going to still boost the heart rate, still get the breathing rate up and maintain that, that aerobic base. So it's a good way to build the foundation. And it can be good to maintain. It also allows for a change of pace from the usual workouts. And this was the main thought in my Instagram post. Is the main reason I went on a jog that day. I was so tired of doing body weight and band workouts. I was tired of split squats. I was tired of push-ups. I was tired of band pull-aparts, and I was tired of all that stuff. So I went on a jog to change, my view on training, to change my view on my training at the time, to change my perspective, to give me some new stimulus, because I was feeling burnt out. So jogging can be a great change of pace from the usual workouts. If, say, you're typically a weightlifter, you're typically a circuit trainer, you're typically, even a swimmer or a bike rider, jogging can be a good change of pace. If you're usually a jogger, same thing could be said, going the other direction, switching to a circuit training or whatever. Because everyone feels burnt out at that time. Using this, different modality allows you to refresh. Personally, I like jogging as a refresh because you can just, you can put in a podcast or music or whatever, in your headphones. You can kind of just go and forget about, you don't have to think about what you're doing next. What you're doing next is you're stepping with your right foot, and then you're stepping with your left foot, and then you're right and heel. So you don't have to think about anything. You just kind of go and almost release. And kind of piggybacking off that, there's this potential for a runner's high. A lot of people hear runner's high. What is it specifically? It's defined as a feeling of euphoria, reduced stress, and lessened ability to perceive pain due to a flood of endorphins released by exercise. So you can get a runner's high from running. You can also get, this runner's high, air quote, from other fitness activities. Swimming, biking, even strength training. It's where you have that workout where you finish and you're tired, but you feel just fantastic. You feel like you're on a cloud. You crush the workout. I didn't personally get the runner's high when I went jogging, but I've had a couple workouts, especially where I've slammed a medicine ball during this quarantine, the shelter in place, where I felt just euphoric. And maybe it's because I was taking out some frustration or whatever, but getting that flood where you feel, hey, I crushed it today. I feel good. I'm tired, but I feel refreshed almost. Being able to get that runner's high is a huge positive for a lot of people, because it lets them know they're headed in the right direction. They did the right amount of things. So how would I incorporate jogging into an average human's program? Again, not talking high level distance athletes, triathletes, I'm not counting them. Jogging is a big part of what they do, and their jogging is way different than our jogging. So I'm going to use an example. I trained a national level mile, 2-miler cross-country runner. Her fun run 5K was twice as fast as my fun run 5K, and I know she had a lot more fun doing it than I did. So they are different. They are different animals. They are different beasts. We're not talking about them. We're talking about your average 9 to 5, adult who wants to incorporate jogging into their training. I think the best way to incorporate it is slowly, right? You don't want to go out too fast, set yourself back, not enjoy it. So starting with, depending on where you are, anywhere from just a half mile, to maybe 1.5 miles or 2 miles if you're a little more advanced, aerobically. Some people are just better at running than other people. I have asthma, not great at running, don't really enjoy it, so I started on the lower end, in the mile range. But, don't make it a huge part of your training. It's not something it's like, well, I want to build this base quickly, so I'm going to do it every day. Again, it's going to set you back. I would just supplement inside your regular training. So let's say you go to the gym 3 days a week, 1 day on the weekend, make jogging part of your, go for a jog as part of your active recovery. Nice easy pace, manageable distance, not trying to set the world on fire. And then the following day, let's say that was Saturday, the following day, a nice recovery day, whether it's just stretching or maybe a mobility routine, whatever like that. And slowly incorporate, more and more distance, and as you're feeling good, maybe you incorporate a second day. So let's say you lift Monday, Wednesday, you jog on Thursday, you lift on Friday, then you jog on Sunday. Something like that. I think smaller doses more frequently, generally, more beneficial. Especially if you haven't had someone coach you on how, or looked up YouTube videos, YouTube your friend, on how to run properly, especially for distance. You want to make sure that you're getting, the ground contact right under your hip. You're going mid to 4 foot, mid-foot if you're running distance, 4 foot if you're going a little less far distantly. That was a weird word. You're traveling lower distances, generally more 4 foot, longer distance, generally more mid-foot, making sure your arms are swinging in the right direction. Go to YouTube, figure out how to run to make sure that you're not setting yourself back. So, those are my thoughts on jogging. I'm not anti-jogging. I'm not pro-jogging. Again, I'm of the camp that everything works, but not everything works for everyone, and not everything works for every situation. I hope this, helped, kind of expand on my ideas at Instagram, so there's a little less confusion. Hopefully I didn't go around the subject too much, and it was fairly easy to follow. If you have any questions about how to incorporate jogging into your training, or how, to help to train those proper running mechanics, feel free to reach out. Instagram is at chase.harris.performance, email chase.harris.performance@gmail.com. There's a contact button on my Instagram where you can, email, text, or you can just DM, whatever. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, reach out. Otherwise, I'll talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Peace.